He saw it tucked away in a dark corner of the trading post, a beat-up old saddlebag, practically swallowed by the shadows. His breath hitched. That worn leather, that familiar buckle. It was hers, his mother's. The one who vanished when he was just a boy, leaving a hole in his chest big enough to ride a herd through. And inside, nestled deep, was a diary, its pages brittle with time. Every turn of a page pulled him deeper into a life she'd lived, a life she never meant for him to know, a secret world he was now unearthing, one painful word at a time. The midday sun beat down on Dusty Gulch, baking the already parched earth. Jebediah Jeb Stone, a man more comfortable with the creak of saddle leather than the clamor of a saloon, leaned against the weathered post of the general store, watching the dust devils dance in the distance. His routine was as predictable as the sunrise, coffee at dawn, tending to his small herd, then a quiet evening by the fire, just him and his thoughts. But today, the calm was about to be shattered. Old Man Hemlock, the proprietor of the trading post, a man whose wrinkles told tales of 1,000 sunrises and sunsets, shuffled out, wiping his hands on a greasy apron. "Got something for ya, Jeb," he rasped, his voice like gravel. He held up the saddlebag. Jeb's gut twisted. He knew that bag. Knew it in his bones. It was the same one his mother, Sarah, had carried on her last ride out of here, nearly 2 decades ago. Found it in the back, tucked away. Must have forgotten it. Didn't recognize it at first, but then I saw the initials etched inside. Jeb's hand instinctively went to the faded scar above his left eye, a memento from a childhood spill. His mother had vanished without a trace, leaving him with his grizzled, silent father and a lifetime of unanswered questions. He took the bag, his fingers tracing the familiar patterns in the leather. A wave of unease, cold and sharp, washed over him. Why now? Why here? He looked at Hemlock, his gaze steady despite the turmoil inside. What else was in it? He asked, his voice low, betraying none of the tremor in his hands. Hemlock scratched his chin, his eyes darting. Just a few odds and ends, and this. He handed Jeb a small leather-bound book, its cover faded and worn. A diary. Jeb's heart hammered against his ribs. It was her handwriting, unmistakable, flowing across the first page. 100 questions screamed in his mind, but his face remained a mask of quiet contemplation. This wasn't just a discovery. It was a ghost from his past, riding into his present. He gripped the diary tighter, his knuckles white. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that whatever was written in those pages, it was going to change everything. And deep down, a part of him dreaded what he was about to uncover. Jeb found himself back at his cabin, the familiar scent of old wood and worn leather doing little to calm the storm brewing within him. He sat by the flickering lamplight, the diary open on his knee. The entries were a jumble, skipping days, weeks, sometimes months. Each word, each line, was a piece of a puzzle he never knew existed. His mother, Sarah, had been living a life far removed from the quiet homestead he remembered. Hints of travel, hushed encounters, and then a name that made his blood run cold. Blackwood. He'd heard that name before, whispered in the saloon, attached to tales of shady deals and ruthless men. A sudden rap on the door startled him. Jeb's hand instinctively went to the pistol on his hip. He was a man of few visitors. Standing on his porch was a wiry man, all sharp angles and quick movements, with eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. This was Silas, a drifter who occasionally passed through Dusty Gulch, known for his keen eye and even keener ear for gossip. "Heard you found something of interest, Jeb," Silas drawled, his gaze flicking to the diary on the table. He didn't miss much. Rumor has it, old Hemlock dug up a ghost from the past. Jeb narrowed his eyes. "Just some old family keepsakes, Silas. Nothing for a man like you to concern himself with." Silas chuckled, a dry, rasping sound. "Family keepsakes, eh? Word is, Hemlock was mighty eager to get rid of that saddlebag. And what's in that book? Well, some folks wouldn't want that brought to light. He paused, his eyes locking with Jeb's. Blackwood's been asking around. About Sarah. Said she owed him something. Jeb felt a cold dread creep up his spine. Blackwood. The name from the diary, now echoing in the present. This wasn't just a sentimental journey into his past. It was a collision course with danger. Silas's words, though casual, carried a heavy weight. His mother's disappearance wasn't just a mystery. It was a debt. And now that debt was falling on him. "What do you know about Blackwood and my mother?" Jeb asked, his voice low and dangerous. Silas shrugged, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. "Only what I hear. But some debts ain't paid with coin, Jeb. Some are paid with blood." He turned to leave, then paused. "He's headed this way. Expect him by morning." Jeb watched Silas disappear into the night. The diary felt heavier in his hands, each word now a ticking clock. Blackwood was coming. His mother's past, tangled with secrets and danger, was no longer just a fading memory. It was a clear and present threat. And with Silas's warning, Jeb realized he had already lost something vital. The comfortable illusion of his solitary, uncomplicated life. The first rays of dawn painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, but Jeb barely noticed. His mind was miles away, years back. Silas's words about Blackwood had ripped open old wounds, letting memories flood back, sharp and painful. He remembered his mother, Sarah, her laughter like wind chimes, her hands surprisingly strong as she taught him to tie a knot. Then, the day she left. He was just a boy, small for his age, clinging to her skirt. "I'll be back, my sweet Jeb," she'd promised, her eyes glistening. He could still feel the warmth of her hand against his cheek, the scent of lavender and dust. But she never returned. His father, a man hardened by life, had just grown quieter, the lines on his face deepening into chasms of unspoken grief. Jeb had learned early on that asking questions about Sarah was like stirring a hornet's nest. Now, those suppressed emotions, long buried beneath layers of stoicism, began to surface. A bitter knot of hurt, a searing loneliness, and a simmering anger at a past he never understood. He ran his calloused thumb over the worn leather of the diary. Why had she kept all this secret? What kind of life had she been living that would bring a man like Blackwood to his door? He decided he couldn't wait for Blackwood to come to him. He needed answers, and he knew where to find them. The name of a small, forgotten mining town, Whisper Creek, had appeared multiple times in the diary, always in connection with urgent coded entries. It was a 2-day ride, a stark landscape shift from the familiar plains and rolling hills to the harsh, unforgiving desert. As he packed his provisions, a small, faded photograph slipped from one of the diary's pages. It was Sarah, younger, her smile wider than he remembered, standing next to a stern-looking man whose face was partially obscured by shadow. But it was the backdrop that made his breath catch, a saloon, with a sign above it, barely legible, reading "The Serpent's Coil." He'd never seen this photo, never known this side of her. His heart ached with a mixture of longing and resentment. He had always idealized her, a gentle, loving mother. But this diary and this photo painted a different picture, a woman with secrets, entangled in a dangerous world. He mounted his horse, the sun already high, beating down on the dusty trail. The desert stretched before him, vast and unforgiving, much like the truth he was pursuing. He gripped the reins, his jaw tight. Was he chasing a ghost or riding into a trap? His heart urged him to find the truth, no matter the cost. To finally understand the woman who had haunted his dreams for so long. But his reason, honed by years of hard living, warned him of the dangers ahead, of the dark secrets Blackwood represented. The choice was clear. Follow the ache in his soul, or turn back and let the past lie buried. He nudged his horse forward, choosing the path of no return. 2 days later, Jeb rode into Whisper Creek, a ghost town clinging to life in the heart of the desert. The wind whistled through broken windows, and the skeletal remains of forgotten mines scarred the landscape. The saloon from the photograph, the Serpent's Coil, stood eerily silent, its sign creaking in the wind like a mournful sigh. He dismounted, his hand on the butt of his pistol, his senses alert. He felt Blackwood's presence before he saw him. A figure emerged from the shadows of the saloon's porch. A tall, imposing man with cold, calculating eyes and a long duster coat that seemed to absorb the light. Blackwood. He was flanked by 2 burly men, their hands resting on their holstered guns. The air crackled with tension, a silence so heavy it pressed in on Jeb. "Took you long enough, cowboy." Blackwood's voice was a low growl, like rocks grinding together. "Heard you found something of mine." His gaze flicked to the saddlebag still strapped to Jeb's horse. "Sarah owed me, and now you do. What did she owe you, Blackwood?" Jeb's voice was steady, despite the tremor in his hands. He was facing the man who held the key to his mother's disappearance, the man who represented everything she had tried to hide. Blackwood sneered. "Information. She was always good at sniffing things out. Had a nose for trouble. Your mother did. And she had something I needed. Something she promised to deliver, then vanished before she could." He took a step forward. "Now, I believe you have her diary, and I'm quite certain it contains what I'm looking for." Jeb's mind raced. He knew the diary hinted at something valuable, something more than just a personal account. He had seen cryptic references to a map and a hidden claim. This was it, the core of the mystery. "She didn't owe you anything?" Jeb countered, his voice rising, a flash of the anger he'd suppressed for so long breaking through. "You drove her away. You threatened her." Blackwood chuckled, a humorless sound. "Threatened? I merely offered her a choice. Cooperation or consequences." He gestured to his men. "Now, hand over the diary, cowboy, or things are going to get ugly." Jeb clutched the diary tighter. He looked into Blackwood's cold eyes, seeing not just a threat, but the man who had tormented his mother. This wasn't just about the information. It was about honoring Sarah's memory, about defying the man who had hounded her to her grave. He shook his head slowly. "Not happening?" The silence stretched, thick with unspoken threats. Blackwood's face hardened. Foolish boy. Just as his men began to draw their weapons, a sudden blinding flash erupted from the saloon's broken window, followed by a deafening roar. A cloud of dust and splintered wood exploded outward. Blackwood and his men were thrown back, disoriented. Jeb, quick as a rattler, drew his pistol. A figure emerged from the dust, a rifle in hand, its barrel still smoking. It was Silas, his face grim, his eyes fixed on Blackwood. The tables had suddenly turned. The dust settled, revealing the chaos of splintered wood and stunned men. Blackwood, regaining his footing, roared in fury, but Silas, quick as a coyote, already had his rifle trained. Jeb, though shaken, understood the unspoken message. Silas was an unlikely ally, but an ally nonetheless. Still, the explosion, the near gunfight, had left a raw ache in Jeb's chest, a hollowness that even the adrenaline couldn't fill. He had faced down Blackwood, but the confrontation had only deepened the wounds of his past. He sat on a rickety porch, a few feet from Silas, watching the setting sun bleed across the desert sky. Silas had disarmed Blackwood's men, tying them loosely while Blackwood, fuming, was kept at gunpoint. There was a quiet understanding between Jeb and Silas, a bond forged in shared danger. Yet, even with Silas by his side, Jeb felt the familiar weight of his own solitude. Cowboys were solitary creatures, always moving, always alone, even when surrounded by others. He was after a map, Silas said, breaking the silence, his voice low. Your mama, she found something big. A silver claim, hidden deep in the Ghost Mountains. Blackwood's been searching for it for years. She knew about it, tried to keep it from him. Jeb looked at the diary in his hand, a new understanding dawning. He remembered the cryptic entries about the stars aligning and the silver serpent. It wasn't just a journal of her life. It was a treasure map, disguised as a personal narrative. The very thing he'd stumbled upon at Old Man Hemlock's trading post, the ordinary saddlebag in an ordinary corner, now held the key to a fortune and the truth about his mother's final days. That dusty, forgotten saddlebag, once a symbol of his mother's abandonment, was now a testament to her courage. She hid it well, Jeb murmured, a strange mix of pride and sorrow washing over him. His mother hadn't just disappeared. She had been protecting something, protecting him. "You could take it, Jeb," Silas said, his eyes scanning the horizon. "Take the map, take the silver, disappear. Blackwood won't follow you to the ends of the earth if there is nothing left for him here." It was a tempting offer, a chance to escape this dangerous legacy, to walk away with enough wealth to live a life free from worry. But it meant leaving Blackwood to his devices, letting his mother's struggle be in vain. It meant ignoring the last pages of the diary, which hinted at Blackwood's larger schemes, his network of outlaws, and the danger he posed to others beyond Whisper Creek. His mother had risked everything to hide this secret, not just for herself, but to prevent Blackwood from gaining more power. He looked at Blackwood, simmering with impotent rage, and then at the fading light. He had a choice, a life of comfort and escape, or a path of risk and justice. The last rays of sun cast long shadows, blurring the lines between right and wrong. He closed the diary, the weight of its secrets heavy in his hand. He knew what he had to do. With a deep breath, equal parts courage and doubt, Jeb stood up, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The final confrontation wasn't a blaze of gunfire, but a strategic dance in the heart of the Ghost Mountains. Jeb, guided by the cryptic map hidden within his mother's diary and Silas's shrewd tracking skills, led Blackwood and his men into a narrow canyon, a natural trap. Instead of a direct shootout, Jeb chose to outwit his adversary. He used his knowledge of the terrain, learned from years of riding lonely trails, to separate Blackwood from his remaining men, driving them into dead ends and disorienting them with well-placed echoes and false trails. When Jeb finally cornered Blackwood, it was not with a dramatic duel, but with a quiet, steely resolve. Blackwood, alone and exposed, his arrogance stripped away, was a shadow of the intimidating figure he'd been. Jeb disarmed him without a shot, the heavy silence of the mountains absorbing Blackwood's curses. Silas, appearing from seemingly nowhere, quickly secured Blackwood and his remaining scattered men. The silver claim was recovered, its bounty immense, but the true treasure wasn't the metal. It was the piece that finally settled in Jeb's soul. Nothing returned to what it was before. The quiet, solitary life he'd known was gone, replaced by a profound understanding of his mother's hidden strength and the complex tapestry of her life. He used the recovered wealth not for himself, but to aid the struggling families of Dusty Gulch and to establish a safe haven for those fleeing dangerous men like Blackwood. Silas, ever the wanderer, eventually moved on, but not before a silent, knowing nod passed between them, a shared history in their eyes. Jeb, now a man transformed, continued to ride the trails, but with a new purpose. The saddlebag, once a painful reminder of loss, became a symbol of legacy. He carried it with him, not for the silver, but for the stories within, a constant whisper of his mother's spirit. He never settled down, not truly, for the call of the open road was in his blood, a part of the freedom his mother had sought. He was still a cowboy, but one with a deeper understanding of the shadows and light that shaped a life. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in fiery hues, Jeb sat by a small fire, the diary open on his lap. He traced the last line his mother had written, faded but clear. "Some trails lead home, even if the home is found in the journey itself. He closed the book, his gaze fixed on the endless stars above. The past was no longer a ghost. It was a compass, guiding him forward.